Pantheon is the newest roller coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg and the newest Intamin Blitz coaster in North America. And today I'll be reviewing this great multi-launch coaster. Now, I change up my reviews a lot, but I'm going to try to simplify things a bit. So I'll be going over the stats and going through the layout, and I'll be rating it out of 8 different categories out of 10, and then tally that up for a final score at the end and give a personal score. Those include intensity, airtime, drop, smoothness, pacing, for this case launches, the restraints, and then layout. So let's get right into the review. Alright, so looking over the stats, Pantheon has a height of 178 feet, a drop of 180 feet, a top speed of 73 miles per hour, a track length of 3,328 feet, a duration of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It has an angle of descent of 95 degrees, as well as 2 inversions and 4 launches. Alright, so for the layout, you're going to come out of the station to a couple little zigzag turns, and then head into your first launch, which gives a nice little boost, but it's nothing overly special. And then you go into 0G winder, which gives some nice hang time and some kind of weird lateral sensations, and to these little outer banks, which are kind of fun, little floaty. You go over your first launch, first of the swing launches, which is okay. You get some nice weightlessness. You go pretty high up the top hat on the first launch, actually, surprisingly. Then going backwards, you get some absolutely insane ejector. It is true, the ejector on these Airtime Hill launches are just insane. Same going forward. The spike is also really, really good. Great floater. And then you go over the top hat, which is some nice airtime going over, and some great ejector on the drop. It's actually a really long-lasting drop and is just a lot of fun, honestly. It's cool going so close to the ground and right by the water. Then you go through a really intense right-hand turn, which is really tight and super fast. Not quite gray out worthy, or I think I grayed out a tiny bit, but it's really not a heavy gray out at all. And then you head into this big outer bank, which is absolutely massive. However, it's not really as much about airtime. It definitely felt more was more focused on laterals. It kind of forced your body sideways. It's pretty fun, though. And then you go into this little turn into the 0G stall, which is okay. It's not that great, honestly. I prefer the stall on Jersey Devil. This one just felt, I don't know, something about it just was kind of weak. It's definitely the inferior of the 2 inversions for me. And then you go into a couple little turns, which don't do a whole lot in the back, but in the front they're pretty fun. Same with this wave turn, which gives some okay laterals, or it's kind of just a little outer bank. And then you will hit the brake run. So that is it for the layout. Alright, so the first category is the intensity, and I was kind of disappointed with the general forcefulness of this coaster. In terms of positives, it doesn't really have too many moments. Like, you have that valley coming off the main drop and the turn. Then you have going up and leveling out from the spike and going up the top hat gives some pretty good positives. But really, that's about it. After that outer bank, it's really not overly forceful. The airtime strength itself isn't overly forceful in terms of strict strength of laterals and all those forces. Not really great, and there's not that many good moments of just wow, crazy intense moments that really stand out. But it's overall has some it has some bursts of intensity, but overall it's inconsistently intense, so it's getting a 6 out of 10 for intensity. Alright, so the next category is airtime, and there really aren't that many strong moments of airtime. You have the second and third swing launches, technically the third and fourth launches going over that Airtime Hill, which are really, really good. You get some crazy strong ejector on those. You get some great sustained airtime on the top hat and the drop, and you get some great floater on the spike, but that's really about it. You really only have 4 or 5 moments of really strong airtime, and those moments are really good. You get 3 great moments of ejector and a really good moment of floater, but there just isn't enough quality airtime, and it's not this absolute strongest airtime to where it totally makes up for the lack of airtime like Skyrush would. But I mean, it's not totally airtime focused. It's focused on giving a variety of elements. So I'll let it slide, but definitely does have some fun airtime moments, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for airtime. Alright, the next category is the drop, and the drop on this coaster is absolutely phenomenal. It is about 180 feet. It feels absolutely massive. You get some great sustained ejector. You already get some pretty good speed going over the top at. In the background, just getting flung over that drop. It's beyond vertical, and it lasts a really long time. It's really strong airtime. Just actually, if you're so long, you get some great positives leveling out from it. It's definitely one of the better drops I've experienced. I'm not sure if it's a top 10 drop. Actually, possibly is, but I don't know about top 5. But it's a really great sustained ejector moment, and just a really, really great drop. So it's going to get a 9.5 out of 10. Alright, so next up is the smoothness, and this was a pretty much perfectly smooth coaster. I didn't notice any sort of rattle or vibration at really any point throughout the ride. Most Intamin coasters are for the most part pretty smooth, and this is definitely one of them. It's pretty much a glass butter smooth coaster, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 for the smoothness. Alright, so next up we have the pacing, and this is a pretty oddly paced coaster. A lot of coasters with swing launches will have some weird pacing and just a lot of slowdowns. This is definitely no exception. You have that first little bit after the first launch, which isn't really super fast. You go into the second launch, first one of the swing launches. You go to the top at slow down, and then come backwards over the second launch, which picks up a lot of speed, but then you slow down on the spike, then come back through the final swing launch, and then come over the top hat where you do slow down a fair amount. But the rest right after that's fairly fast. You do slow down a bit on the big outer bank just because it's really drawn out, but I think that adds to the forces of it. Then you have that stall, which is a bit slow, and the ending isn't overly fast. It's pretty weirdly paced, and honestly, it's not super well paced. There's a lot of slow moments. It's definitely just overall an oddly paced coaster, but it's not horrible, so it's going to get a 6.5 out of 10 for the pacing. Alright, so the next category is the launches, and Pantheon has 4 launches. It starts off with that first little boost. After a couple of turns on the station, it gets up to 36 miles an hour. It doesn't really do too much, but it gives you some speed to get through 0G winder and the couple little outer banks for the main launch section. Then you have the 3 swing launches. First one is 50 miles per hour. Doesn't really do a whole lot. However, it does pick up some nice positives, kind of building the kind of end of the launch after the hill, which is nice. And you have the backwards swing launch, which reaches 61 miles per hour. And then you have the final swing launch going forwards, where you reach fastest launch speed 67 miles per hour. And those last 2 launches actually get some really solid positives, as well as some just insane airtime. Such a great, incredible quick pop of ejector going over those, while getting some great positives as well. And there's actually one really insane underrated moment leveling out from the hill and the backwards launch. For some reason, it's just like insane. But I was definitely really, really pleasantly surprised with those final 2 launches. Were really fun. But overall, it doesn't have like the best launches ever. But it does have like 4 of them, so I guess that's kind of cool. But they're pretty decent launches, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for the launches. Alright, so the next category is the restraints. And this has the newer gen Intamin kind of over-the-shoulder lap bar. And it's really, really good. This is the same restraint that's on like Hyperion, VaCoaster, and just a lot of newer Intamin coasters. And it's a really, really good restraint. It contours really nicely. Pretty comfortable. Definitely, they do staple you on this thing, but I mean, it has nothing to do with the restraint itself. It's just a park thing. But even then, it doesn't like hurt, and still allows for some pretty good airtime. And you can do inversions with these restraints too, which is really great. Overall, I really like usually like over the shoulder lap bars, some like the Mac ones and like the ones on Skyrush. But really no complaints with these restraints. They're just really, really nice lap bars and just really great. So I want to say gonna give it a 9 out of 10 for the restraints. All right, so I forgot to mention earlier, but this will be a category included. The next category is the inversions, and Pantheon has 2 inversions, and they're pretty good. You have that 0G winder, which is sort of like it's kind of like that roll on Valraven where it starts off like a 0G roll, then it kind of hangs you sideways and then levels out while you're banked pretty steep. But this one does feel a little bit smaller. We get some great hang time and some fun laterals on it, especially in the front. It's definitely better in the back. Good hang time, but I don't feel like you get as much laterals. It gets more pull coming out of it. And then you have the stall, which is pretty good. Doesn't really have much whip coming in or out of it, but it gives some solid hang time. But it's nothing overly special. It's definitely... it's pretty good, but I don't know. I prefer the 0G winder, but it has some good inversions, so it's going to get a 6.5 out of 10 for the inversions. Alright, so the final category is the layout, and Pantheon has a pretty unique layout for an Intamin Blitz coaster. There really aren't that many coasters of this scale, or multi-launch coasters of this scale, to have a swing launch, besides like Coaster Through the Clouds. So that's very interesting. It combines kind of some small elements before the swing launch, and then it has that swing launch and some bigger elements with the top hat and outer bank, and some kind of small low to the ground elements with like the stall, those final turns, and that last little outer bank. So it definitely has just an interesting combination of elements and launches, and it's definitely very unique. It's not overly long, but I think it's a pretty cool layout. It kind of blends weirdly, but it's overall pretty fun. I do like the layout, so it's going to get an 8 out of 10 for the layout category. Alright, so for the final score based off of all of the categories, Pantheon gets a 7.8 out of 10. However, for my personal score, I give this coaster a 9.7. It is a really, really fun coaster. It's currently my number 11 coaster, ahead of Twisted Cyclone, but behind Magnum XL 200. It was originally my top 10. In fact, I think right after I rode it, or I guess after I left the park and thought about it some more, I think it was like my number 7. It was ahead of like Twisted Timbers and some other coasters in the bottom half of my top 10. But I moved it down over time just because I realized it does have a fair amount of weaker elements. It is a fun coaster, but it is kind of carried by a few elements like the swing launches, the spike, the top hat, the outer bank. The 0G winder's pretty fun. The stall is fine, but all those other like turns and everything are just kind of fine. Like this outer bank here is okay. There's not much to it, and it just flows kind of weirdly, but it's a fun coaster, and it is my favorite coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. So there you have it. That's my review of Pantheon, the newest roller coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and the newest Intamin Blitz coaster in the U.S. So make sure to like this video, comment down below what your thoughts on Pantheon are, if you've ridden it, what you agree with me on about it, when you disagree, and make sure to subscribe for more coaster content coming soon, and I will see you guys later. Bye.